It is do or die time for Brent Pry. In 3 years with Virginia Tech, Pry is just 16-21 with 2 losing seasons and has failed to exceed 7 wins. That's not acceptable by Virginia Tech standards. And last year, a year where many, including myself, thought Virginia Tech could finally break through, the Hokies disappointed massively, going just 6-7. They have to at least get to a bowl game this year to save Pry's job, but it might take a little bit more than that. You take a look at last year before we dive into this season. 6-7. And what hurts the most for Virginia Tech, I think, is that they easily could have been a 9, 10, 11 win team. Why? Because they had 5 one-possession losses. They lost in overtime to Vanderbilt in the season opener, and it was in that moment that we knew Virginia Tech probably wasn't going to live up to the expectations we had in the preseason. They lost in overtime to Vanderbilt. They lost to Rutgers. They lost to Miami. They lost to Syracuse. They lost to Duke. All of those by 1 possession. You want to know what hurts even worse? Virginia Tech was tied or winning. They were winning or tied with 2 minutes remaining in 4 of their losses. When that 2-minute warning came along, they were winning or tied at that mark, and they still lost 4 of them. That hurts. That stings. It shows how close Virginia Tech was. It shows how good this team was, but couldn't deliver in the clutch, couldn't stay healthy, and now they got to bounce back in a big way for the sake of Brent Pry. Take a look at the offense. They've got a new offensive coordinator, Phil Montgomery, former head coach at Tulsa. Pretty good hire, I thought, by Brent Pry. And now, you look at this team. Last year was a year that I thought the offense could be phenomenal. They practically had everybody back. Kyron Drones was hot at the end of 2023, but they actually regressed. They went from 29.5 points per game in 2023 down to 28.2 last year. They went from 391 yards per game in 23 down to 368. So it wasn't a massive drop-off, but it was still a regression. And, part of that you blame on health. Kyron Drones really couldn't stay healthy. Colin Schlee, their backup, battled some injuries at times. The Virginia Tech quarterbacks only combined for 14 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. They didn't have much of a passing offense. But now Kyron Drones is back. We're hoping to see him return to that back half of 2023 form. He was phenomenal in those final few games, especially in the bowl game. We're hoping he can get back to that. They add Terrion Stewart in from Bowling Green at running back, a phenomenal pickup. Stewart rushing for over 2,300 yards in his 5-year career there. They add Donovan Green, the big wide receiver out of Wake Forest. Feel like he's been in college forever, but a great pickup for the Hokies. The offensive line needs some work. They allowed 34 sacks last year, and only 63 career starts are back. To me, that's kind of the glaring weakness on offense right now. The glaring weakness is the offensive line and making sure their quarterback delivers, but also can stay healthy, which could be harder if he's constantly under pressure. Defense. New defensive coordinator, Sam Sefkees, who has plenty of experience in the NFL. Again, a phenomenal hire, I thought, by Brent Pry. 7 starters are back after giving up just 22.8 points per game and only 363 yards per game. So the defense wasn't really horrendous last year by any means. Their top 2 tacklers do return. Jaden Keller had 83 tackles, and Caleb Woodson had 72 tackles. Both those guys return in the linebacking core. So you could argue that might be the strength of the defense just from experience alone, and both those guys playing really good ball in 2024. The defensive line last year had 37 sacks. The defense as a whole had 37 sacks, but they lose Antoine Powell-Pyland, who had 16 of those. Unbelievable. I don't think people talk nearly enough about this guy, and it probably was because Virginia Tech wasn't competing. They weren't competing at a high level. They were struggling. But 16 sacks last year. They do lose him, but Kevin Gilliam does return. Transfer in from Oklahoma, was there last year. He's back. James Joncom does return from Eastern Michigan, or they bring him in from Eastern Michigan. 98 tackles last year, 11.5 tackles for a loss with the Eagles. And they add Ben Bell in from Texas State. 19 sacks with the Bobcats over the last 5 years. The secondary adds in 6 transfers. A guy like Tyson Flowers from Rice is going to make immediate impact, but has some question marks there. So the front 7 actually has a lot of potential. Again, that linebacking core looks really good. The defensive line, despite losing Powell-Pyland, does have, some talent, especially coming in from the portal. The secondary is the thing I'm probably most concerned about. Let's take a look at the schedule. Virginia Tech, they were so close last year. They were better than their records show. There's no denying that. But can they exceed last year's 6 regular season win total? Can they get to a winning season in the regular season? They open up the year with back-to-back games against SEC opponents. They have to go to NC State, to Georgia Tech, to Florida State. They draw Miami. They draw Louisville. I guess the only good thing is they avoid Clemson and SMU. But still, A lot of tough games on this schedule. And again, what's a do or die, make or break year for Brent Pry. Opening the year against South Carolina in Atlanta in the Beamer Bowl. Shane Beamer, the son of Frank Beamer, he's the head coach of South Carolina. Frank Beamer was the head coach at Virginia Tech forever, was the one that made this program really relevant, had them so consistent year in and year out, and the last few coaches have not lived up to those expectations. Justin Fuente, Brent Pry, guys like that. So this will be a fun storyline that I'm sure they'll talk about all day on Saturday. But to me, this is a bad opening game for Virginia Tech and a game that I think they're going to lose. You're facing a hungry South Carolina team that enters the year with very high expectations with a potential Heisman Trophy candidate at quarterback in Lenore Sellers that's now going to come out here and challenge the secondary that has tons of new transfers. How quickly do those transfers gel? Do they live up to the expectations? This is, again, a very talented South Carolina team that maybe I'm not as high on as others, but I can admit and see that they are talented. I just don't think Virginia Tech offensively has enough to keep up with them. I'm not sure their defense has enough to slow them down. I think they lose to South Carolina in Atlanta, but they beat Vanderbilt. So they're going to at least split those two games. And I think Vanderbilt at home in Blacksburg is the more likely of the two wins. A revenge game after losing in overtime last year. The key in this game is stopping the run, and more specifically, as we know, stopping Diego Pavia, right? Virginia Tech allowed 181 rushing yards last year to the Commodores. They only mustered 75 of their own. So you need Kyron Drones to deliver. You need him to be mobile. You need him to make plays with his legs. But you also got to find a way to contain Diego Pavia in the pocket. Don't allow him to pick up those third downs with his legs. Don't allow him to make magic happen like we saw time and time again last year in that magical season for Vanderbilt. So with revenge on their mind at home, a very tough environment, as we know, Blacksburg is the home opener for them. I think Virginia Tech does get the job done because I do think they were slightly, at least healthier, maybe even like slightly better talent-wise than they were last year, you could argue. They're going to win that game. They're 1-1, and they're going to be 3-1 with back-to-back wins over Old Dominion and Wofford. They're going to win both of those. So 3-1, a fantastic start. Only lost to South Carolina. Nothing to hang your head about there. Now you enter the bulk of conference play. Got to start doing some damage. It doesn't come immediate because they're not going to beat NC State. I like this NC State team a lot. Very underrated home team under Dave Doeren. Got a young quarterback in CJ Bailey who I think is going to take a big step. He was kind of thrust on the scene. Had to start 8 games last year. Wasn't supposed to be the starter. That was supposed to be Grayson McCall. So a lot of quarterback injuries in the ACC last year. I think Bailey is going to be better with a whole year under his belt now, knowing he's the starter. Factor in their top 2 pass catchers return. Factor in their leading rusher returns. Factor in they've got a really underrated defense. This is, to me, is not a good matchup for the Hokies. They lose that game, but they do beat Wake Forest, who I think will struggle in year 1 under Jake Dicker. Will probably be towards the bottom of the ACC standings. So they're 4-2. Then they go on the road to Georgia Tech. Last year, if you're just looking at this on paper, you'd go, man, they beat Georgia Tech by 15. They can do it again. Well, let's do a deeper dive here. Georgia Tech did not have Haynes King in that game because Haynes King was battling injuries. So again, ACC quarterbacks battling a lot of injuries last year. So Haynes King was in and out throughout the year, was out for that Virginia Tech game. Despite him being out, Georgia Tech still outgained Virginia Tech by 123 yards. Virginia Tech got the win. That's all that matters. But Georgia Tech was still putting up the yards. That Virginia Tech defense just did enough to get the job done. So now, in theory, Haynes King's going to be healthy. This Georgia Tech team is better than they were last year. Now they've got home field advantage. Factor in everything with that. And I'm going to pick the Yellow Jackets to win this game. I'm very high on Georgia Tech. I think they've got a lot of talent. Really excited to see them in action as long as they can stay healthy. They lose that game. Heading into their bye week, Virginia Tech is 4-3. We'll make them 5-3 with a win over California, who, like Stanford, like Wake Forest, guys like that, are going to struggle mightily in 2025. So at home, off a week of rest, Virginia Tech shouldn't have an issue with the Golden Bears. 5-3, 1 win away from a bowl game. But look at the month of November. Before we get into anything else, look at the month of November. How rough that is. Louisville, even getting them at home, is a dang good football team. 16 starters back, won 9 games last year, was in the ACC Championship the year before that. Jeff Brom, a heck of a coach. On the road at Florida State, who, yes, was horrendous last year, but has improved in theory. Now, heading into 2025, should be much better. Really can't get much worse. Miami, who Virginia Tech almost beat last year. Almost beat them last year, but lost in controversial fashion. That Hail Mary called no good. I mean, it was a crazy, crazy ending. Only lost by 4, but still a dang good football team. And then on the road at Virginia, who they've dominated, but now it's on the road. So a really brutal month of November for a team sitting at 5-3. And you can't help but wonder, could they find a way to beat Carolina? Could they find a way to get to NC State so they could just clinch bowl eligibility and not sweat it in the final month of the season. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I think Virginia Tech loses their next 3 games. And I know some fans might hate to hear that and actually disagree with that. Because, I mean, I love Blacksburg. It's a very good place to play, a tough place to play. And I think people might find it interesting that I have them losing 2 of their biggest home games to Louisville and Miami. But with the Louisville game, I really would be concerned for the Louisville rushing game. Isaac Brown's the real deal. He was a phenomenal running back. And this Virginia Tech rushing defense was not great last year. They really weren't. Had a lot of holes there. So you've got a competent quarterback in Miller Moss for the Cardinals, a good running back, some good receivers, 8 starters back on defense. I mean, I look at this game and I think Louisville owns the edge in every aspect of this game, even coaching edge as well, with the exception of home field advantage. And I think the Cardinals overcome that. Then you go on the road to Florida State. Very tough road environment too, because the Florida State team that's improved drastically. And I wonder, can this defense for Virginia Tech contain Thomas Castellanos? They're going to face a lot of mobile quarterbacks. Sellers is mobile. Pavia is mobile. Bailey can be mobile. Haynes King can be mobile. So can they contain another mobile quarterback in Thomas Castellanos? Can they exploit a Florida State defense that should be better at all 3 levels? And can they do it now all on the road? On senior day for the Seminoles, mind you. I just don't think they can. Then you play Miami at home, who, as we mentioned, they lost by 4 last year. That Hail Mary that was called no good, controversial fashion, held their own against the Hurricanes, played well, but was still outgained by over 100 yards. The only reason they kept that close because they were +2 in the turnover margin. This could be the upset because we've seen Miami falter down the stretch many years. 2017, last year even, when they lost to Syracuse and kept them out of the playoff. But I think the Hurricanes simply are too good. I have a lot of faith in Carson Beck. I like this offensive line a lot. I like the defensive line even more. And that defensive line concerns me going up against a Virginia Tech offensive line that I do think can be a little shaky. So I think they do fall to Miami, which means they're 5-6. After being 5-3, they're now below 500, needing a win over Virginia just to go bowling and to clinch another 6-6 season. It would be their 3rd straight 6-6 season. And they will do just that. Because why would I pick them to lose to Virginia? Right? I mean, they've won 4 straight over the Cavaliers. They've won 19 of the last 20. This is one of the more lopsided rivalries, I feel like, in college football, just in recent history. Virginia Tech typically dominates this rivalry. And yes, the Cavaliers will be better. This is Tony Elliott's best squad there. I don't disagree with that. I think they're going to be better. I think Chandler Morris is a great pickup at quarterback. But with everything riding on the line here, win or go home essentially for the Hokies, with history on their side as well, they're going to get the job done. They posted 456 yards. As bad as his offense was last year, as much as they struggled, they put 456 yards of offense on the Cavaliers last year. They rushed for 202. Maybe those numbers don't get replicated, but if Virginia Tech stays healthy, they will put up quite a bit. They get the win. They get to 6-6. They get to another bowl game, which would be their 3rd straight bowl game. 3rd straight bowl game. Have a shot at a winning season to get to 7-6, but that's probably not good enough. I mean, maybe they do keep Brent Pry, but this is a program that, after the foundation that Beamer built and left, has not the expectations have not been met since he retired, since he left. That's not just a Brent Pry thing. That's a previous regime thing as well. Virginia Tech expects excellence. They expect to compete at a high level. They aren't doing that. So while, yes, another bowl season is good, and while, yes, maybe you could find 1 or 2 more wins in there, I think 8-4 are probably the ceiling for this team. Really would more likely be 7-5. We got them at 6-6. That's a solid year. It does get them to a bowl game, but it is disappointing. And you can't help but wonder, is that enough to save Brent Pry's job? Do they decide to move on? And if so, who do they go with? And if so, does that set the program back even further? A lot of questions surrounding this Hokies team, a team that, to me, is probably the most difficult team to predict within the ACC. We've got them pegged at 6-6, certainly hoping for better, but going to be a very interesting season, not just during the season, but to see what happens after it as well. So guys, as always, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home to our expert picks, some of the best college football and NFL spread picks in the entire country. Also home to our weekly newsletters, giving you jam-packed, exclusive information you won't get anywhere else. The link for that down in the description below. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.
Yeah.